Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be diving into password security and penetration testing.
Ooh, sounds intense.
It is. We've got some excerpts from a SANS Institute course on ethical hacking and network penetration testing.
Really?
Yeah. So we'll be looking at how these guys get into systems and what we can all learn from that to better protect ourselves.
So it's like we're learning from the bad guys to become good guys.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh.
So first up, we've got a tool called John the Ripper.
John the Ripper?
Yeah. Have you heard of this one before?
I have, actually, yeah. It's like this legendary tool in the password cracking world.
Yeah, that's right. It can handle a huge range of password types from Windows Landman and NT hashes.
Oh, yeah, those are the classics.
Yeah, to Linux UNIX SHA 512 representations.
Wow.
If it's a password, John's probably seen it before.
So it can identify all sorts of different password types.
Yeah, and it doesn't just stop there. It can also crack those passwords.
Oh, wow.
It's got a bunch of different cracking modes to actually break through those passwords.
Like what?
Well, there's the dictionary attack,
Mm.
where it tries passwords from a massive predefined list.
So it's just like going through the dictionary?
Yeah, basically.
Oh.
And then there's single crack mode, which uses any known information about the user.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, like birthdays or pet names to make more targeted guesses.
So if I use my dog's name as my password, I'm in trouble.
Yeah, basically.
Okay.
And then if those don't work, there's incremental mode,
Hmm.
which just goes full brute force and tries every single possible combination of characters.
Wow. So that could take a while.
Yeah, it can. It's very time consuming, but sometimes it works.
Okay.
And then for the truly hardcore password crackers,
Yeah.
there's external mode.
External mode?
Yeah.
What's that?
So that's where you can write your own code to tell John the Ripper exactly how to formulate guesses.
So you're giving it a PhD in password cracking.
Pretty much.
Wow.
But here's a surprising fact about John the Ripper.
Okay, I'm listening.
It doesn't officially support distributed password cracking.
Really? You mean you can't use multiple computers to speed up the process?
That's right.
Interesting.
But there are ways around it.
Oh, okay.
Savvy hackers have found ways to split the password file strategically across multiple computers
Or?
and avoid duplicate salts,
Hmm.
which are random pieces of data added to the password before it's hashed
Right.
to still speed up the process.
So it's like a team of Johns all working together to crack the code.
Exactly. Now let's move on to a tool that not only cracks passwords, but also acts like a digital bloodhound sniffing out sensitive information from network traffic.
Ooh, sounds exciting. What is it?
It's called Cain Enable.
Gain enable.
Yep, and it's a powerful tool for password cracking and network sniffing.
Interesting.
So its password cracking capabilities are very impressive.
like what?
It can tackle a whole bunch of password types.
Okay.
From Landman and NT
Mm-hmm.
to NTLM v1 and v2, Radio S, Cisco, Kerberos, and more.
Wow, that's a lot.
It's like a skeleton key for practically every network security protocol out there.
So it can crack pretty much any password it encounters.
Pretty much, but what's even more interesting is its sniffer functionality.
Mm-hmm.
So you know how some protocols send passwords or hashes in plain text?
Yeah.
Well, Cain can intercept that data,
Really?
potentially giving an attacker access to your accounts.
Ooh, that's not good.
It's like leaving your front door wide open.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
So some of the protocols it can sniff are FTP,
Okay.
Telnet, RDP, SMTP, HTTP, SMB, and even VoIP.
Wait, VoIP? You mean King can listen to my phone calls?
That's right.
Ooh.
It can actually decode sniffed SIP RTP traffic into WAV files.
Really?
Yeah, which makes it possible to listen in on voice conversations.
That's creepy, but also kind of cool from a technical standpoint.
Yeah, it is. So it's important to be aware of these capabilities.
Definitely.
Now, Cain can also manipulate your network traffic using something called ARP poisoning.
ARP poisoning.
Yeah, have you heard of that before?
I have. It's basically like setting up a detour sign on the information superhighway.
Exactly, except the detour leads straight to the attacker.
Right.
So instead of directly attacking a system, Cain can redirect traffic and intercept sensitive information.
That's sneaky.
Very sneaky. And to give you an example,
Yeah.
we're going to show you how to use Cain to crack Landman challenge response authentication exchanges,
Okay.
which we'll capture using TCP dump on a Linux machine.
That's complicated.
We'll walk you through it, don't worry.
Okay, good.
Now let's talk about a password cracking technique that's all about speed.
I'm intrigued.
It's called rainbow tables.
Rainbow tables.
Yeah.
What are those?
Imagine a massive lookup table with millions of password hashes and their corresponding plain text passwords already calculated.
Oh, wow.
That's essentially what a rainbow table is.
So instead of trying to crack each hash individually. You just look it up in the table.
Exactly. And boom, you've got the password.
That's clever.
Yeah. And they achieve this through these chain and reduction functions, which we won't get into here.
Yeah.
But essentially, they allow these rainbow tables to achieve very high success rates with surprisingly small file sizes.
So it's like having a cheat sheet for password cracking.
You could say that.
Cool.
And if you're looking for a tool that uses rainbow tables to crack Windows LAN-MAN and NT hashes, there's a tool called offcrack.
Offcrack. Okay, I'll have to check that one out.
Yeah, it's a popular choice among penetration testers.
Okay.
So we've talked about brute force attacks,
Right.
dictionary attacks,
Yeah.
and now rainbow table. But there are even more devious password cracking techniques out there.
Really?
Yeah, like pass the hash attacks.
Pass the hash.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of that one?
I think so. Remind me how it works.
So instead of trying to crack the password directly,
Yeah.
the attacker steals password hashes from the target environment
Interesting.
and uses those hashes to authenticate to the system.
So they're like stealing a key instead of trying to pick the lock.
Exactly. And tools like Windows Credentials Editor, Metasploit SecSec, and Nmap, NSE, SMB scripts can make this surprisingly easy.
Yikes.
And here's a chilling fact about pass the hash attacks.
Okay, what is it?
Even after Microsoft tried to patch this vulnerability,
Wow.
the RID 500 account, which is the administrator account in Windows,
Right.
it remains vulnerable.
Wow, so even the administrator account isn't safe.
That's right. So pass the hash is a very serious threat that you need to be aware of.
I'll keep that in mind.
Okay, so now let's move on from passwords to web applications.
Okay.
There are some specialized tools for scanning and analyzing web applications to find vulnerabilities.
Like what?
Well, first up, we've got Nikto.
Nikto.
Yeah, it's like a digital detective that scours web servers for well-known vulnerabilities.
So it's like an automated security audit.
Pretty much. It
Right.
can identify things like dangerous files, misconfigurations, outdated software versions,
Okay.
and potential cross-site scripting flaws. So it's a great tool for getting a quick overview of a web server's security posture.
So it's like a first line of defense.
Exactly. And then there's another tool called ZAP Proxy.
ZAP proxy.
Yeah, have you heard of that one?
I have. It's supposed to be very powerful.
Yeah, it is. What can it do?
So imagine having the ability to intercept and manipulate the traffic that flows between your browser and a web server.
Oh, wow.
That's what ZAP does.
So it's like a man-in-the-middle attack tool?
It can be used for that, but it's primarily used for security testing.
Okay.
So you can inspect, edit, and even pause requests and responses in real time.
Wow, that's a lot of control.
Yeah, you can see everything that's happening behind the scenes. So it's essential for identifying and fixing vulnerabilities.
Okay, so security researchers and ethical hackers use this tool
Yeah.
to find vulnerabilities before the bad guys do.
That's right. And one of the cool things about ZAP is that it has this break functionality.
Great functionality.
Yeah. So you can actually pause requests and responses in real time
Really?
and modify sensitive information like cookies or hidden form fields. So you can actually tamper with the data.
Yeah, basically.
That's powerful.
Yeah, ZAP is a very powerful tool.
Okay.
So now that we have an overview of some of the key password cracking and web application security tools,
Yeah.
let's dive deeper into a specific category of web vulnerabilities.
Okay, I'm ready.
And those are injection attacks.
Injection attacks.
Yeah, these are attacks where malicious code is injected into user input fields, taking advantage of poorly written code that doesn't properly validate or sanitize the data.
So it's like sneaking something dangerous past security.
Exactly. And we're going to be talking about several types of injection attacks.
Like what?
We'll cover cross-site request forgery,
Oh.
cross-site scripting, command injection, and SQL injection.
Wow, that's a lot to cover.
It is, but we'll break it down and explain each one in detail.
Sounds good. I'm ready to learn.
So let's start with cross-site request forgery, or XSRF.
XSRF.
Yeah, so this type of attack is all about tricking victims into performing unwanted actions on a website without their knowledge.
So like clicking a button that does something you didn't intend to do?
More like your browser doing something without you even clicking anything.
Oh, wow.
So for example, let's say you're logged into your online banking account.
Oh.
And you click on a link from a seemingly harmless email or website. But hidden within that link is malicious code that forces your browser to send a request to your bank.
Really?
Yeah, potentially transferring money to the attacker's account.
So even if I'm careful about what I click on, I can still be vulnerable.
That's right. XSRF attacks exploit the trust a website has in your browser.
I see.
Your bank thinks it's you making the request because it's coming from your browser with your cookies.
Oh, wow. So it's like someone forging your signature on a check.
Exactly.
That's scary.
It is. So you need to be very careful about the links you click and the emails you open.
Definitely.
Now let's talk about another type of injection attack called cross-site scripting, or XSS.
XSS.
Yeah. So with XSS, attackers aren't tricking your browser into doing something. They're injecting malicious scripts directly into a website. And this code then executes in your browser when you visit the site.
Oh, so it's like planting a booby trap on a web page.
Exactly.
And are there different types of XSS attacks?
Yeah, there are two main types, reflected and stored.
Okay, what's the difference?
So reflected XSS is like a quick hit and run. The script is reflected back to the victim immediately after they click a malicious link or submit a form.
Okay.
But stored XSS is more like a time bomb.
Oh.
The script is permanently stored on the website,
Yikes.
affecting every user who visits the affected page.
So stored XSS is much more dangerous then?
Potentially, yes, because it can affect a lot more people.
Right.
And the consequences of an XSS attack can be pretty devastating.
Like what?
Attackers can steal cookies, launch attacks against internal systems,
Whoa.
or even manipulate the content of the website.
Wow, that's bad.
It's like giving the attacker the keys to the kingdom.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
And here's an interesting twist. Attackers can even use XSS to launch NICTO scans against internal networks from a victim's browser.
You're kidding.
Yeah, so they're basically using your own computer to attack your company's network.
That's insane.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy.
So these seemingly simple websites can be used for some pretty serious attacks.
Exactly. That's why web developers need to be very careful about how they handle user input.
Definitely.
All right, now let's move on to command injection.
Command injection.
Yeah, so imagine an attacker finding a vulnerability in a web form that allows them to inject operating system commands. They could potentially take control of the server running that website.
So they can run commands directly on the server.
That's right. And to test for command injection vulnerabilities, attackers often use a simple command like ping.
Ping.
Yeah. It's a harmless command that's available on most operating systems.
Okay.
But it allows them to see if their commands are being executed.
So it's like a test to see if they have a foothold on the server.
Exactly. And there are two main types of command injection, traditional and blind.
Okay, what's the difference?
In traditional command injection, the attacker can actually see the output of their commands directly in the web page response.
So they can see what's happening on the server in real time.
That's right. But in blind command injection, they have to rely on indirect methods like network sniffing to confirm that their commands are being executed.
So it's more stealthy.
Exactly.
Interesting.
And here's a chilling thought.
Oh, I don't like the sound of that.
They can use blind command injection to create a reverse shell back to their own machine.
Really?
Yeah, giving them full interactive access to the target system.
So it's like opening a back door into the server.
That's right.
That's scary.
It is. So command injection is definitely something you need to be aware of.
Definitely.
All right, finally, let's talk about SQL injection.
Okay.
This is one of the most common and most dangerous web vulnerabilities.
I've heard of this one.
Yeah, so with SQL injection, attackers inject malicious SQL code into database queries, potentially gaining access to sensitive data, modifying existing data, or even executing commands on the database server.
Wow, that's bad.
It's like breaking into the vault where all the crown jewels are stored.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
And attackers can exploit SQL injection vulnerabilities in a number of ways.
Like what?
They can modify query logic to extract data they shouldn't have access to. They can insert or update data to manipulate the database.
Okay.
And they can even execute commands on the database server to gain further control.
So they can pretty much do whatever they want with the database.
Pretty much. And for example, let's say there's a website with a search function.
Okay.
If the website doesn't properly sanitize the search term before sending it to the database, an attacker could inject malicious SQL code into the search field.
Oh, I see.
And this code could then be executed by the database, potentially giving the attacker access to sensitive data or control over the server.
So even something as simple as a search bar could be a security vulnerability.
Exactly. And attackers can get even more creative with SQL injection.
Really?
Yeah, they can use it to upload malicious files to the web server.
Whoa.
Creating backdoors and gaining persistent access to the target environment.
So it's like planting a spy in the enemy's camp.
That's a good way to put it. So SQL injection is a very serious threat that you need to be aware of.
I'll keep that in mind.
So we've covered a lot of ground in this first part.
We have.
From classic password cracking tools like John the Ripper to sneaky attacks like Pass the Hash and various types of injection attacks. And it's clear that these attacks can be pretty scary.
They are.
But don't worry, we'll be getting more hands-on in the next part.
Okay.
And walking you through some of the techniques we've discussed in more detail.
Sounds good. I'm ready to get my hands dirty.
Great. We'll see you then.
See you then. All right, let's get our hands dirty and walk through some of the techniques we've discussed.
I'm ready to see these tools in action.
Okay, so first up, we've got John the Ripper.
Okay.
We're going to watch it crack some password hashes from a Windows machine.
All right, let's do it.
But before we unleash John, there's the crucial step that penetration testers often take to maximize efficiency.
Okay.
We're going to custom compile John to take advantage of SSE2 instructions on our processor.
SSE2 instructions.
Yeah, it's a bit technical, but basically it gives John a significant speed boost when cracking certain types of password hashes.
So it's like giving John an energy drink.
Exactly. We want John to work as quickly as possible.
Makes sense. So what kind of passwords are we going to try to crack?
We're going to start with a file containing landman hashes.
Landman hashes, those are the ones that are really weak, right?
Yeah, they're notoriously weak, and they often crack almost instantly.
Okay.
And that's because of a couple of quirks.
What kind of quirks?
Well, first, they convert all passwords to uppercase before hashing them.
Oh.
And second, they split the password into 2 7-character chunks and hash them separately.
So it's like breaking a 14-character password into 2 7-character passwords.
Exactly. And this significantly reduces the complexity of the hash, making it much easier to crack.
I see.
So as we watch John work its magic, you'll see how quickly those landman hashes crumble.
I'm ready for the show. Crack those passwords, John.
All right, John's done with the landman hashes.
Already?
Yeah, see how fast that was?
Wow.
Now let's give it a more challenging target.
Okay, bring it on.
Linux Unix SHA 512 password representations.
SHA 512, now those are much stronger, right?
Much stronger. Those hashes are going to take considerably longer to crack.
Okay.
Cracking SHA 512 hashes can take a significant amount of time and processing power.
Yeah, I remember you comparing it to the difference between picking a simple padlock and cracking a high-security safe.
Exactly, but with the right dictionary.
You mean lists of potential passwords?
Yeah, John can still prevail.
Okay, so even strong passwords aren't foolproof.
That's right. No password is uncrackable.
Okay.
But strong passwords definitely make the attacker's job much harder.
That's good to know.
All right, so John's working hard on those SHA 512 hashes.
Okay.
While we wait, let's switch gears and fire up Cain and Abel.
Cain and Abel.
Yeah, we're going to use it to sniff out and crack landman challenge response authentication exchanges.
Okay, sounds good.
Now, Cain has its own built-in sniffer.
Right.
But we're going to use TCP dump on Linux instead.
TCP dump.
Yeah, it's more reliable and gives us more control over the process.
Okay, so what exactly does TCP dump do?
It's a command line tool that lets you capture and analyze network traffic.
So it's like a digital surveillance camera for your network.
Exactly. You can see all the data packets flowing in and out of your computer.
I see.
So we're going to use TCP dump to capture the landman challenge response authentication exchanges.
Okay.
And then we'll feed that data into Cain to crack the password.
Got it. So it's like we're setting a trap and then waiting for the prey to walk in.
Exactly. But to make things more interesting, we're going to simulate a real-world attack scenario.
Okay. How do we do that?
We'll use some client on our Linux machine.
Some client.
Yeah, it's a command line tool for accessing SMB shares.
Okay.
We're going to use it to try and mount a share on a Windows box using a bogus username and password.
So it's like trying to break into a building with a fake ID.
Exactly. And as this authentication attempt takes place, TCP dump will be silently capturing all the landman challenge response exchanges happening between our Linux machine and the Windows box.
Okay.
And once we have those captures, we hand them over to Cain, which will analyze the data and attempt to crack the password.
So it's like giving a detective the evidence from a crime scene and letting them piece together the puzzle.
Exactly. And while Cain is working its magic, we can explore some of its other handy features.
Like what?
Well, it has a built-in hash calculator, which can be very useful during a penetration test.
How so?
Let's say you found some suspicious data that looks like it might be a password hash. You can plug it into Cain's hash calculator to see if it matches any known hash algorithms.
So it's like a fingerprint database for password hashes.
Exactly. And if you know what type of hash it is,
you
can then use Cain or other tools to try and crack it.
Okay. That makes sense.
And of course, we can't forget about Kane's ARP poisoning tool.
ARP poisoning, the detour sign on the information superhighway?
That's the one.
Right.
And Kane makes this process surprisingly easy.
So it's a pretty versatile tool.
It is a great all-around tool for password cracking and network analysis.
All right, so Kane's working on cracking those landman challenge response exchanges.
Yep.
What about, John, any progress on those SHA 512 hashes?
It's going to take a while.
Okay.
But he's making progress.
All right.
In the meantime, let's explore something completely different.
Okay, I'm game. What is it?
Rainbow tables and offcrack.
Ah, yes. The magical password cracking solution.
They're not exactly magic, but they are pretty close. Remember we talked about rainbow tables being like a massive lookup table for password hashes?
Right, and their corresponding plaintext passwords.
Exactly. Offcrack leverages these pre-computed rainbow tables to crack Windows, LANMAN, and NT hashes incredibly quickly.
So instead of brute forcing the passwords, Offcrack just looks them up in the table.
Exactly. It's like having a skeleton key that can open a surprisingly large number of doors.
Okay, I'm ready to see Offcrack in action.
All right, let's do it. We're going to use Offcrack to crack the hashes from a Windows SAM file.
The SAM file?
Yeah, Security Accounts Manager. It's a database that stores user passwords on Windows machines.
Okay.
So we're going to extract the password hashes from a real Windows system and then feed them to Offcrack.
Sounds like a plan. Let's crack some SAM files.
All right, Offcrack is loaded and ready to go.
Okay.
Now we just need to transfer the SAM file from the Windows machine.
This is the moment of truth.
It is. Let's see if Offcrack can crack the passwords.
Fingers crossed.
Now remember, Offcrack relies on pre-computed rainbow tables.
Right.
So the success rate depends on whether the passwords we're trying to crack are included in those tables.
So there's no guarantee that it'll be able to crack every password.
That's right. But if the passwords are common or weak, there's a high probability that Offcrack will find a match.
Okay, so the SAM file is transferred?
Yep.
What's happening now?
Offcrack is comparing the hashes from the SAM file to its rainbow tables.
Okay.
This process can take a few seconds or even a few minutes.
All right.
It depends on the size of the tables and the complexity of the hashes.
Okay.
But look, there we go. Offcrack has found matches for several of the passwords in the SAM file.
Wow, that was fast.
Yeah, that's the power of rainbow tables.
It's amazing how quickly he was able to crack those passwords.
It is. They can significantly speed up the password cracking process.
Okay. I'm definitely impressed by Offcrack.
It's a powerful tool.
Yeah, it highlights the importance of using strong passwords.
Absolutely.
And implementing robust security practices.
Definitely. Okay, so now that we've seen Offcrack in action, let's move on to a truly sneaky attack that we talked about earlier.
Okay, I'm ready to get sneaky. Which one is it?
Pass the hash.
Pass the hash.
Yeah, remember we compared it to sneaking into a building using someone else's security badge.
Right, you don't need to know the code, you just need the badge.
Exactly.
So you steal the hash, which acts as a kind of digital badge, and use that to authenticate to the system.
That's right.
So no password cracking required.
Nope.
That's pretty clever.
It is. And to demonstrate this attack, we're going to use a tool called Windows Credentials Editor.
Windows Credentials Editor.
Yeah, we're going to use it to extract the LANMAN and NT hashes from a target Windows system.
So we're going to be stealing those digital security badges.
Exactly. And once we have those stolen hashes, we'll use them to gain administrative access to the target machine.
All without knowing the actual password.
That's right.
That's pretty scary.
It is. It's a serious vulnerability.
Yeah, it seems like a major security flaw if attackers can just steal hashes and bypass passwords altogether.
It's definitely a concern, and it highlights the importance of defending against pass-the-hash attacks.
So how do you even defend against something like that?
Well, these attacks can be particularly difficult to detect and mitigate.
Why is that?
Because they often don't trigger any alarms or leave any obvious traces.
So it's like a silent but deadly attack.
Exactly. That's why it's crucial to implement strong security measures, like multi-factor authentication.
Okay, so multi-factor authentication can help protect against pass-the-hash attacks.
It can.
Definitely. All right, so we've covered John the Ripper, Cain and Abel, Offcrack, and pass-the-hash.
Right.
Now let's turn our attention to web application security.
Okay, I'm ready.
We're going to see Nikto and ZAP proxy in action.
Awesome. Let's do it.
All right, so first up, we've got Nikto.
Nikto, the digital detective.
That's the one. Remember, it scours web servers for well-known vulnerabilities.
Right, like outdated software misconfigurations and dangerous files.
Exactly, to show you how it works. We're going to run Nikto against a target web server.
Okay.
And watch as it uncovers potential security weaknesses.
Let's go.
Okay, Nikto is running.
All right.
As it scans the target web server.
Yeah.
It's checking for a wide range of vulnerabilities, including outdated software, misconfigurations, dangerous files, and potential cross-site scripting flaws.
So like a comprehensive checklist for web server security.
Pretty much. And as you can see, Nikto is already starting to flag some potential issues.
Oh, wow. Look at all those red flags.
Yeah, it seems like this web server has quite a few vulnerabilities.
It does.
Yeah.
And this is just a small sample of what Nikto men find.
So it's a pretty useful tool.
It is. It's essential for maintaining good web server security.
All right, so Nikto has given us a good overview of the potential vulnerabilities on this web server.
Yeah.
What's next?
Now let's fire up ZAP proxy.
ZAP proxy.
Yeah, remember, it gives you incredible control over the traffic flowing between your browser and a web server.
Right. You can inspect, edit, and even pause requests and responses in real time.
Yeah, exactly. So to demonstrate its capabilities, we're going to use ZAP to intercept traffic from our browser to a target website.
Okay.
We'll inspect HTTP requests and responses, modify cookies, and even manipulate form data on the fly.
So we're going to be playing puppeteer with web traffic.
You could say that.
I like it. All right, let's manipulate some web traffic.
Okay, VAP is up and running.
All right.
I'm going to visit our target website in my browser.
Okay.
And you'll see the traffic flowing through ZAP in real time.
Wow, look at all those requests and responses flying by.
Yeah, it's like a digital highway of information.
It is, and we can see all of it.
We can see every single packet of data that passes through.
So we can see exactly what information is being sent between the browser and the server?
Exactly. And we can even modify that information on the fly.
So how does this help us identify and exploit vulnerabilities?
Well, for starters, we can use ZAP to inspect the HTTP headers and cookies.
Okay.
They're being sent between the browser and the server. This can help us identify potential security misconfigurations or weaknesses in the application authentication mechanisms.
So we can see if the website is properly protecting sensitive information like passwords and session tokens.
Exactly. And we can also use ZAP to manipulate the data that's being sent in HTTP requests.
Okay.
For example, we could modify the values in a form submission to see if the application is properly validating user input.
So we can test for vulnerabilities like SQL injection and cross-site scripting.
You got it. ZAP is a powerful tool for simulating real-world attacks.
And seeing how the web application responds.
Exactly, which helps us identify vulnerabilities before malicious actors can exploit them.
Okay. ZAP is definitely a very impressive tool.
It is.
It's amazing to see how much control it gives you over web traffic.
It is a powerful tool.
All right, so we've seen Nikto and ZAP in action.
Yep.
Now it's time to dive deeper into some specific types of web application attacks.
Okay, I'm ready. Which one are we starting with?
Cross-site request forgery or XSRF?
XSRF. All right, let's get sneaky.
Remember how we talked about XSRF attacks exploiting the trust a website has in a user's browser?
Right. It's the tricking the website into thinking that the user is performing an action that they didn't actually intend to do.
Exactly. And to demonstrate how these attacks work, we're going to walk you through a classic XSRF scenario.
Okay.
We're going to create a malicious link that when clicked by a victim, forces their browser to send a request to a target website.
Okay.
Potentially performing an action that the victim never authorized.
So we're going to be crafting a booby-trapped link.
That's right. And we'll show you how even seemingly simple actions like visiting a website or clicking on a link can have dangerous consequences if you're not careful.
Thank you. I'm definitely paying attention.
So first we need to choose a target website that's vulnerable to XSRF.
Okay. What kind of websites are typically vulnerable?
Any website that relies solely on cookies for session management and doesn't implement proper CSRF protection mechanisms.
So we need to find a website that doesn't have adequate security measures in place.
Exactly. For this demonstration, we've set up a simple web application that's intentionally vulnerable to XSRF.
Okay.
So what's the first step in crafting our malicious link?
We need to identify an action on the target website that we want to exploit.
Okay.
Let's say there's a function on the website that allows users to change their email address.
All right.
We'll exploit this function to change the victim's email address to our own without their knowledge or consent.
Okay. That's pretty sneaky.
It is. So how do we craft a link that will trigger this action?
I'm all ears.
We need to create an HTML form that, when submitted, will send a request to the target website to change the email address.
Okay.
But instead of displaying this form to the victim, We'll embed it in a hidden iframe on our own malicious website.
A hidden iframe?
Yeah.
So the victim won't even know that the form is there.
Exactly. The iframe will be completely invisible to the victim.
Okay.
But their browser will still process the form and send the request to the target website.
Wow. So the victim will be changing their email address without even realizing it.
That's right. And to make things even more convincing,
yeah,
we'll disguise our malicious link as something harmless.
Okay.
Like a link to a funny cat video or a breaking news article.
So the victim thinks they're clicking on something innocent.
Yep.
But in reality, they're triggering a malicious action.
Exactly. That's the essence of an XSRF attack. It exploits the trust that a website has in a user's browser to perform actions that the user never intended to do.
Okay, I'm starting to see how dangerous these XSRF attacks can be. It seems like a relatively simple attack to pull off.
It can be.
But the consequences can be significant.
They can be very significant.
So what can website developers do to protect their users from these attacks?
Well, there are a number of effective CSRF protection mechanisms that developers can implement.
Like what?
One common technique is to include a unique, unpredictable token in every form submission.
Okay.
This token is often referred to as a CSRF token.
CSRF token.
Yeah, and it's generated by the server and stored in the user session when the form is submitted.
Yeah.
The server verifies that the token included in the request matches the token stored in the user session.
I see.
If the tokens don't match, the request is rejected.
So it's like a secret handshake between the browser and the server?
Exactly. If they don't know the secret handshake, their request is denied.
That's a great way to put it. So CSRF tokens are an effective way to prevent attackers from forging requests.
They are.
And performing unauthorized actions.
Exactly.
Okay, so website developers need to be aware of XSRF attacks.
Definitely.
And implement appropriate security measures to protect their users.
Absolutely. CSRF is a serious vulnerability that should not be taken lightly.
Okay. Now that we've seen how XSRF attacks work,
yeah,
let's move on to another type of injection attack that we talked about earlier.
Okay.
Cross-site scripting, or XSS.
XSS, or
yeah.
Remember we talked about injecting malicious scripts into websites?
Right, which then execute in the victim's browser. So it's like planting a booby trap on a web page.
That's a good analogy.
Yeah.
And to show you how these attacks work in practice,
yeah,
we're going to exploit two different web applications.
Okay.
One, vulnerable to reflected XSS, and the other to stored XSS.
Okay, sounds good. So remind me again, what's the difference between reflected and stored XSS?
Reflected XSS is like a quick jab. The script is reflected back to the victim immediately after they click a malicious link or submit a form.
Okay.
But stored XSS is more like a time bomb.
Right.
The script is permanently stored on the website,
okay,
affecting every user who visits the affected page.
So stored XSS is more dangerous then?
Potentially, yes, because it can affect a lot more people.
Okay, I see the distinction. So let's start with a reflected XSS attack. How do we exploit a website that's vulnerable to this type of attack?
First, we need to find a vulnerable input field on the target website.
Okay, so a place where we can inject our malicious...
Exactly. This could be a search bar, a comment form, or any other field that allows users to enter data.
Got it. And then what...
Once we found a vulnerable input field, we need to craft a malicious script that will execute in the victim's browser. Now, for this demonstration, we'll keep it simple.
Okay.
We'll just create a script that pops up an alert box.
So just a basic proof of concept.
Exactly, just to show that we can execute code in the victim's browser.
Okay. And then how do we deliver the script to the victim?
There are a few different ways. We could send them a malicious link.
Okay.
Or embed the script in a website that they're likely to visit.
So we need to trick the victim into interacting with our malicious code.
Exactly. And that's the key difference between reflected XSS and stored XSS.
Right. With reflected XSS, the attacker needs to actively lure the victim into the trap.
That's right.
Okay, so let's say we've done all that. We found a vulnerable website.
Yep.
We've crafted our malicious script, and we've found a way to deliver it to the victim.
Okay.
What happens next?
When the victim interacts with our malicious link or visits the website where we've embedded the script, their browser will execute the script.
And in this case, they'll see an alert box pop up on their screen.
Exactly.
So it's a pretty obvious attack.
For a simple proof of concept like this, yes.
Okay.
But attackers can craft much more sophisticated XSS attacks that are much more difficult to detect.
So they could steal sensitive information.
They could.
Or take control of the victim's browser without them ever realizing what's happening.
Exactly. That's why XSS is such a dangerous vulnerability.
Okay, I'm starting to get it.
Yeah.
Now let's move on to stored XSS. How is that different?
With stored XSS, we don't need to trick the victim into interacting with our malicious code.
Oh.
Instead, we plant our script directly on the target website.
Mm.
This could be done by submitting the script through a comment form, a forum post, or any other input field that stores data persistently on the server.
So the malicious script becomes part of the website's content.
Exactly.
And every time someone visits that page, their browser will execute the script.
That's right.
So the attack has a much wider reach.
It does. Yeah. Stored XSS attacks can potentially affect a large number of people.
Okay, let's see. A stored XSS attack in action. What kind of malicious script are we going to plant on the website this time?
Instead of just popping up an alert box.
Yeah.
Let's do something a bit more deviant.
I like where this is going.
We're going to craft a script that steals the victim's cookies.
Steal their cookies? Why would we want to do that?
Cookies are small text files that websites store on your computer.
Right.
To track your browsing activity and preferences.
Yeah.
They can also be used to store sensitive information like session tokens.
Session tokens?
Yeah, which are used to authenticate users to websites.
Okay.
So if we can steal the victim's cookies, we can potentially impersonate them and gain access to their accounts.
Oh, wow. So cookie stealing is a big deal.
It is. It's a common goal of XSS attacks.
Okay, so how do we craft a script that steals cookies?
It's actually pretty simple. We just need to use a bit of JavaScript code to grab the victim's cookies and send them to our own server.
And the victim won't have a clue.
Nope. The script will...
It seems like a lot that attackers can do with XSS.
You're absolutely right. It's a very powerful vulnerability.
Okay. I'm definitely going to be more cautious about visiting websites and interacting with online forums from now on.
Good. It's always better to be safe than sorry.
All right. So we've seen XSRF and XSS in action.
Yep.
What's next?
Let's move on to command injection.
Command injection. All right. Bring it on.
Remember, this is where attackers inject operating system commands into web applications.
Right. Potentially gaining control of the server.
Exactly.
So it's like hijacking a plane in mid-flight.
That's a great analogy. And to show you how serious this vulnerability can be, we're going to exploit two different web applications.
Okay.
One vulnerable to traditional command injection, and the other to blind command injection.
All right, so remind me again, what's the difference between traditional and blind command injection?
With traditional command injection, the attacker can see the output of their commands directly in the web page response.
Okay, so they can see exactly what's happening on the server in real time.
Exactly. But with blind command injection, the attacker has to rely on indirect methods to confirm that their commands are being executed.
So it's more stealthy.
It is much more stealthy.
Okay, so let's start with traditional command injection. How do we go about exploiting this vulnerability?
First, we need to find a vulnerable input field on the target website.
So a place where we can inject our malicious commands.
Exactly. This could be any field that passes user input to a system command without proper sanitization.
Got it. And then
once we've found a vulnerable input field, we need to craft a command that will execute on the server. This could be something simple, like a command to list the contents of a directory, or something much more complex, like a command to download and execute a malicious payload.
So we can potentially take complete control of the server with a single command.
That's right. Command injection vulnerabilities can be extremely dangerous.
All right, let's see it in action. What kind of command are we going to inject?
For this demonstration, we'll inject a simple command to display the contents of the server's root directory.
Okay, so we can see what's on the server.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm watching closely.
Okay. I've entered our malicious command into the vulnerable input field.
All right.
Now, when I submit the form, the web application will pass our command to the server's command prompt.
Okay.
And the server will execute the command.
And display the output in the web page response?
Exactly. And as you can see...
Whoa, look at all those files and directories.
Yep. It's like we have a map of the entire server.
It is. And that was just a simple command.
That's right. Imagine what an attacker could do with a more complex command.
Okay, I'm definitely starting to see the power of command injection. It's a frightening vulnerability.
It is. Now let's move on to blind command injection.
Blind command injection. All right, so how do we exploit this vulnerability when we can't see the output of our commands?
We have to rely on indirect methods to confirm that our commands are working.
Like what?
One common technique is to use time delays.
Time delays.
Yeah, we inject a command that will cause the server to pause for a specific amount of time.
Okay.
And if we observe this delay in the web page response, we know that our command was executed.
So it's like sending a signal to the server and waiting for a response.
Exactly.
All right, so let's see a blind command injection attack in action. what kind of time delay command are we going to inject?
We'll inject a command that will cause the server to sleep for 5 seconds.
Okay.
If we observe a 5-second delay in the web page response, we'll know that our command was executed successfully.
Okay, let's give it a try.
All right. I've entered our time delay command into the vulnerable input field.
Okay.
And submitted the form. Now we wait.
1 Mississippi, 2 Mississippi, 3 Mississippi.
There it is. The web page took 5 seconds to load.
Wow, that's amazing. So we were able to execute a command on the server without even seeing the output.
That's pretty sneaky.
It is. Blind command injection is a very stealthy and dangerous attack.
Okay, I'm adding that to my list of scary web vulnerabilities.
It's definitely one to be aware of.
So we've covered traditional command injection.
Yep.
And blind command injection.
Mm-hmm.
Now let's move on to our final injection attack for today.
All right, which one is it?
SQL injection.
SQL injection, the king of injection attacks.
It's definitely a force to be reckoned with.
Remember, with SQL injection, we're exploiting vulnerabilities in database queries to gain access to sensitive data, modify existing data, or even execute commands on the database server.
It's like breaking into the vault where all the crown jewels are stored.
That's a good analogy.
So, to demonstrate the power of SQL injection, we're going to exploit a vulnerable web application.
Okay.
Using carefully crafted SQL queries to extract data from the database and even display arbitrary text on the web page.
So we're going to manipulate the database like a puppet master.
Exactly.
I'm ready to see this. Okay, so first we need to find a vulnerable input field on the target website.
Okay.
This could be any field that passes user input to a SQL query without proper sanitization.
Got it. So any place where we can inject our malicious SQL code.
Exactly. Now, let's say there's a website with a simple login form.
A login form.
Yeah. The form asks for a username and a password.
Right.
And it sends this information to the server to check if the credentials are valid.
Okay.
If the website doesn't properly sanitize the username and password before sending them to the database, an attacker could potentially inject malicious SQL code into these fields.
So even a simple login form can be a potential attack vector for SQL injection.
Exactly. That last part was pretty intense. Seeing those injection attacks in action really makes you think about web application security.
It definitely does.
Yeah.
But the good news is that we can learn from these attacks and figure out how to protect ourselves.
Yeah.
That's what we'll focus on in this final part of our deep dive.
Okay, I'm ready to learn how to stay safe.
All right, let's start with the basic strong passwords. We've seen how easy it is to crack weak passwords.
Right, like using your dog's name or something.
Exactly. So let's talk about what makes a password truly strong and how you can create passwords that can withstand even the most determined attacks.
Okay, I'm all ears. Give me the golden rules of password creation.
Well, first and foremost, length is key. The longer your password, the harder it is to crack. Aim for at least 12 characters.
12 characters, okay.
And don't be afraid to go even longer if you can.
Okay.
Now, the next thing is complexity. Mix things up. Use a combination of uppercase and lowercase letters, numbers and symbols, and avoid predictable patterns or common phrases.
Got it. So no password 123 or QWERTY.
Definitely not. Those are the first ones attackers will try. And here's another crucial tip.
Okay.
Don't reuse passwords across multiple accounts.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. I've definitely been guilty of that in the past.
It's a common mistake, but it's a really important one to avoid. If one of your accounts is compromised, you don't want the attacker to have access to all of your other accounts.
It's like using the same key for your house, your car, and your office.
Exactly. If you lose that key, you're in big trouble.
Okay, so long, complex, and unique passwords for every account. Got it. But how am I supposed to remember all of those?
That's where password managers come in. These tools are lifesavers for creating and managing strong passwords.
Password managers?
Yep. They generate random complex passwords for you.
Okay.
And store them securely so you don't have to remember them all.
So it's like having a digital vault for all your passwords.
Exactly. And there are many great password managers out there, both free and paid.
Any recommendations?
Do your research and find one that fits your needs and your budget. But the most important thing is to use one.
Okay, password managers. Got it. What else can we do to protect our systems?
Well, let's talk about secure coding practices. This is especially important for anyone who's building web applications.
Right, because all those injection attacks we talked about were the result of poorly written code.
Exactly. Secure coding needs to be baked into the software development process from day one.
Yeah.
It's not something you can just add on at the end.
So what are some key principles of secure coding?
One of the most important is input validation.
Input validation.
Yep. Never trust user input. Always sanitize and validate all data coming from external sources before using it in your applications.
So basically, don't let the bad guys sneak in through the back door.
Exactly. And another important principle is output encoding.
Output encoding?
What's that? It basically means converting special characters in the data into a format that's safe to display in a web browser.
Okay.
This helps prevent cross-site scripting attacks.
So it's all about making sure that the data is clean and safe before it's displayed to the user.
Exactly. And don't forget about error handling.
Error handling.
Yep. Handle errors gracefully and securely. Never reveal sensitive information in error messages.
Right, because attackers could use that information to their advantage.
Exactly. Error messages can be a goldmine for attackers.
Okay, so input validation, output encoding, and error handling. Got it. Anything else?
Yes, stay up to date with the latest security best practices and vulnerabilities.
Right, because the bad guys are always coming up with new tricks.
Exactly. The cybersecurity landscape is constantly evolving, so you need to stay informed and adapt your defenses accordingly.
It's like a never-ending game of cat and mouse.
That's a great way to put it. And that brings us to the importance of security testing.
Security testing?
Yeah. Regular penetration testing and vulnerability assessments can help you identify weaknesses in your systems before attackers exploit them.
So it's like hiring a professional burglar to test your home security system.
Exactly. Penetration testers use many of the same tools and techniques that we've talked about in this deep dive.
Right.
But they do it ethically and with your permission to help you improve your security posture.
Okay, that makes sense. So strong passwords, secure coding practices, and regular security testing. Anything else we should keep in mind?
One more thing. Technology is only part of the equation. You also need to consider the human element.
The human element.
Yeah, attackers often target the weakest link in the chain. And that weakest link is often a careless employee or a poorly designed security policy.
So security awareness training is important.
Absolutely. Educate your employees about common attack vectors like phishing emails and social engineering scams. Teach them how to identify and report suspicious activity.
It's like teaching your kids not to talk to strangers.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And don't forget about physical security. It's not just about protecting your digital assets. It's about protecting your physical infrastructure as well.
Right. Sometimes the easiest way to hack a system is to just walk in and steal the data.
That's true. So secure your servers, implement access control measures, and be mindful of who has physical access to your facilities.
Okay, so it's a multifaceted approach.
It is. Security is a journey, not a destination. It's an ongoing process of continuous improvement.
So stay vigilant, stay informed, and always be willing to adapt and evolve your defenses.
Exactly. Because the only constant in cybersecurity is change.
Well said. Well, I feel like I've learned a lot in this deep dive. Thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
You're welcome. It's been my pleasure.
It's been fascinating to learn about all these different attack techniques and how we can defend against them.
It's important to be aware of the threats out there so you can protect yourself.
Absolutely. Well, that's all the time we have for today. Thanks for joining us on the deep dive.
Thanks for having me.
We'll catch you next time for another deep dive into a fascinating topic.